everyone, to episode 2 of the Ethos Podcast. Titled this one is Looking into the Mirror. Tonight we have with me Simon Gojkovic. You doing, mate?
Hey, mate. Gotta get that Gojkovic in there.
Can't let that one slip. And always you got myself, Hayden Walduck, as the second sort of regular voice you're going to hear on this podcast. So how you been this week, Simon? What's been happening?
I've been busy at work, but forgetting work for the K World. Just lots of prep for our one of our topics tonight, which is that Teams event that we had. For anyone who's following any of the stuff on the Ethos on Facebook, you would have seen that we did well. Not to bury the lead, but yeah. So a bit of prep for that and just practicing and all that.
Yeah, nice, mate.
What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, personally, I did a couple of foundations and test runs for the Team Australia Marine Army I'm painting for that raffle. So expect some photos to come up on the page soon of how we're going. We have the Salamander Strike Force kit, so the big box has 20 NSSs, 2 units of Gravis Marines, and the Primaris Sally character.
I saw a sneak peek and they look pretty sick.
Yeah. So just gonna refine that, really Oz them up. Put the Australia logo on the shoulder pad. Putting some feelers out there to get either little snakes or beer cans 3D printed to put on the bases.
Very nice.
Just some tufts to throw some terracotta earth onto, and really Oz them up. So.
Is there like a vehicle or anything like that?
No vehicles.
What about a standard? Is there like a go for standard?
Nah, the best I got to work with is probably the cape on the character. But the back side of the cape
I'm thinking
is...
to like hook up some goon bags like on the side of a land spader or something like that.
Nah, look, I can green stuff a sandbag, so I might green stuff a sandbag and just tweak it into a goon sack, maybe for the Eradicator to stand on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let us know when I post up the teaser on the page what you guys think, if you got any Australia suggestions. Yeah, but that's on the 40k front. Personal front, I'm finishing up my ad leave, so I'm back to work tomorrow.
Hey, good work.
Yeah, so not exactly looking forward to it, but it's been 3 weeks off. I kind of need to get back to work now, so that's happening.
Very nice. Now for my kids, I took the first one. I took 3 months off. Second one, I took 2 weeks off because she was sleeping through the night from day one, and my wife just said, "All right, go back to work."
The dream.
Yeah. And then the next two, it was like 2 months off each, just because I like any excuse for a holiday for me.
I get my 3 months off from September, so
Perfect.
it lines up pretty well with the tournament calendar. Coincidentally, didn't plan it, but that's just how it went.
And this might be a topic for a different podcast, which we'll do, but as almost like a little sneak peek, because we just talked about it yesterday at the team event, which will be the next topic. That how you have to really work to fit in your general life and family life and your partner and all that with your hobby calendar and stuff like that. So that's something we'll definitely cover in more detail in a future episode, but it is a big thing, and you're welcome now to that topic for you.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to be on that podcast because I haven't got it down pat yet, so I'm not going to talk on that one. But it's a good segue into our topic for today, and we're going to have a chat about the recent team event we ran in Brisbane, the interclub event that we attended, as well as some retrospective of what we drew from that event, and how we approach a mirror match, because we had almost as mirror as it gets in the last round versus drop bear. So we played a tower versus tower list. It was almost identical up to about the last 150 points. So we'll get into a bit of meat and gravy for that for you guys, and hopefully you can have some takeaways from it. But just to start, we wanted to say a big thanks to the TOs who ran the event for us. The drop pair guys, just picked it up, ran with it, got the venue, talked to the Burley shop down there to get some terrain, and just really put this together from nothing. So big shout out to those guys who, without them, this just wouldn't have gone ahead. I think at the end of the day, we end up raising about almost $500 for Team Australia. So great outcome and a great cause.
Yep, and I said it last podcast, but and a couple of times on the weekend. I just love the friendly rivalries that we've got here in Brisbane, especially. Like we've got 6 or 7 clubs where good players are throughout all the clubs, and that they can actually pull together a reasonably strong team, each of them, and we're not like angry at each other. We're not oh yeah, we're the west side and east side and all that other bullshit. It's literally we're just trying to get better, and we just happen to live around this area, so we're going to play together and then just make each other better. I just love that, honestly.
Yeah, like it's a really good environment for players to play against other clubs and get some more exposure, but also get some reps into some guys that they might not see at events, because they might be in the upper mid tables or lower high tables, and they feel like they'll not be at the caliber, but they get to sort of test their meta a little bit against some of these better players in a quite friendly and quite relaxed environment. I think we don't recall or hear anything about a TO needing a rules call of any significance. There was beers flowing being at a brewery, and everyone, when you looked around the room, it was just a really good time. Everyone had a smile on their face. Everyone was just enjoying themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, I know I talked to a couple of players and some of the, we'll say, captains of the different teams, and like that was either their first time doing pairings at a certain level, and like they're talking to them, say maybe this more experienced captains, we had in the last round. We were chatting outside and just talking about pairing options, and because that was in essence like their first or second time ever pairing at a team event, and maybe to a couple of the guys, the first team event they've ever attended. So it's just going to mean that next time they're going to be stronger as both players and captains, and then whoever's at the top has to just continue to get better and better.
Yeah, and at this event we had most of the Queensland team, or at least half the Queensland team, across a couple of clubs, and then a good half of the Queensland Merc team again across a couple of clubs. So it was not as much as a sneak peek into what each other might be playing, but just a good way to just mingle with each other and just get a bit of extra knowledge, and just learn from some other players that you don't typically have a day-to-day interaction with them on the tables.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what about in terms of prep? What did you run, mate?
Well, we spoke about this being a relatively friendly event and casual event, which 100% it was, but every tournament needs prep. So, before going in, I, as I said, recently just become a dad. It's quite a hectic personal home life at the moment. So my prep was pretty minimal. I was able to keep my Orkan Tower list from Uprising with just a couple of weeks from the minimal amount of games I've had with it. So for people who are familiar with my Uprising list that I took to Uprising list, the Tower list, it was pretty standard Tower, so 2 Hammerheads, 2 Riptides, 3 Breacher Fish, and double Commanders, with just some Crew Towns chaff. But what I actually did in prep for this event, because I've played against Simon Zeldari and Rory Argent's Guard, I really didn't like just a 5-man paper unit sitting behind a wall and just causing issues where I have to come to them. And I never liked playing into someone else's plan. So what I actually did is I made the bold choice, without any practice, to rip all the options off my Devilfish and my Riptides and put SMS on all of them, purely just out of theorycraft. And it actually gave some really, really helpful insight over the weekend. So we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about the Bearer match.
And
So that
was there anything that triggered that? Or that was literally you just saying, I think this is going to be interesting and this will be a good kind of competitive experience or like experiment?
Yeah, so I played that game against you at your house on that Sunday, and just having 5 rangers sit behind a wall where I have to put something of a value out, and you'll have a chance to counter react, or you've staged some sort of unit to bounce off it or gain some advantage off it. If I can just shoot 35, 36 smart missile shots at them, they're probably going to die. Even if I am hitting on 5s or 6s, if you're lightning fast. There's a flow-on effect of baited out your lightning fast. That's another point. And then I played against Rory, and there's 9 mortars and 30 Caskins sitting behind a wall that I can't really do much against. There's no efficient platform for airburst outside of a precision commander, in my personal opinion, because I don't like crisis blobs. I haven't done for sort of the last 8 months. So this was the next best option to have that indirect to actually keep them honest and make them think about what they're going to do in their game.
Because the SMS were on the... You said you stripped out the boats. Were they on... No, they weren't on the boats. What were they on?
Yeah. They were on my 3 devilfish.
Ah,
so I didn't,
right.
Didn't put them on my hammerheads. Put them on my 3 devilfish and on my 2 riptides.
Right. Okay.
The Riptides have a smaller advantage because they have the multi-tracker, so they get exploding 6s against 6 or more models. And they great against Kaskin. And they also get +1 hit if you have the fly keyword, which came up actually pretty significantly in my first game against Audie from Normal Blokes, who's running his Blood Angels. I was able to get around the dense terrain and pepper his Death Company or his normal assault squads from behind a wall, putting them back to their normal 3-up armors because it ignores light cover, and I'm back to my normal ballistic skill. So it was really good there. I was able to kill sort of 3 Death Company before they could even step out and commit. And by the time he realised that I could pepper them, there's 2 Death Company left and they don't do anything.
Yeah, and for a lot of the meta, you've got demons, like the Slaneshi demonettes behind cover and stuff like that. Like lots of people, and because we generally play on WTC terrain, or variations on WTC terrain, having stuff that can shoot out of line of sight, even or is quick enough to get around the corners for line of sight is pretty much now a must.
Yeah, if you're a shooting army and if you're a mono a shooting army like Tau, then it's a huge fundamental thing that I think you need to have a real think about your lists.
I mean, your melee Tau is legendary, so I don't know what you're saying. Mono shooting.
Look, I've taken that and I've put it up on my shelf, and I admire it, and then I'll never do it again because it was painful. But look, that was sort of the extent of my prep. What about yourself, Simon?
Yeah. So it's no big secret. I've pretty much been sharing my variations on Elder World to players all around Australia for the last bloody 6 months. Because I got back from WTC and I was on the way to WTC. I talked to Chris Wright, who was playing our Elder, and he was telling me about all the cool things about Elder, and I was like, man, I as soon as I get back to Australia, I'm gonna hang up my hang up my what's the saying? Hang up your shirt? No, hang up
your boots.
Hang up my boots. Fuck. All right, I'm gonna hang up my boots and switch back to Elder, because the Elder book had been out for like 6 months, and I hadn't played it at all. I hadn't even really looked at the book, and I was hankering for it. Grabbed it straight onto Yanari, played that for like a month and a half, then Swift Strikes, then Althway, then Vengeful Savage Blades, then back to Swift Strikes, and then for Uprising I ran a Shining Spear Heavy Samhain list, which you guys possibly would have seen. Did reasonably well with that, with a 6 and 2, and just went first. I think was it 6 games? Yeah, 6 games went first. No, 5 games went first. Sorry, there was one game I went second and actually won. which is good. But 5 wins with going first 5 times. And it was like,
shaking my head right now, by the way.
yeah. So it was fun, but what I was noticing was the psychic output was hit and miss in Samhain. And because I just come from Ulthway, I was like, oh, I really like the Ulthway variation on this because of the psychic stuff. But Ulthway is a little bit slow compared to, say, Samhain, right? Because Samhain had the 6-inch auto advance plus advanced charge, for the bikes. And so I was trying to mix the two, whereas like I want the psychic output of Ulthway, but I also want the speed and kind of punch of Samhain. Or same hand. However you pronounce it. Anyway,
the same hand. Yeah.
Yep. That's right. It's is Don is good and all that stuff. Anyway, so I because I'd been talking to Michael Edwards, and I remember him messaging me a couple of months beforehand on a custom craft world with like plus movement and Children of Prophecy, or he went Children of Prophecy. No, he went plus movement and Vengeful Blade or something like that. Anyway, I started looking at them, and I went, oh, this looks pretty interesting. I can really lean into the psychic because I've gone Children of Prophecy, reroll 1s and 2s for cast and deny, and I can get kind of almost the same speed as the same height with the Children of Open Skies, because you get +2 movement for fly or 1 movement for everything else, minimum advance 3. I was like, interesting. Built up my in essence list. I dropped all the Shining Spears and put in the newly buffed, because they dropped 5 points, Shroud Runners, and what's that guy with the sticker he slaps on a shot, like a Elder jet bike thing? You can fit so many men in this jet bike. You've got 2 guys strapped onto the back of a jet bike, and it's like,
you fit so many rangers on this bad boy.
Exactly. And so that's pretty much where I've ended up with. I played around with different variations there. Eventually added a Harlequin detachment to get a Death Jester in, and just played a million different variations of that in prep for this event. Not specifically just this event, of course, leading up to ATC. So I just need to be agile in Elder World, because I've played everything. So if once we get the the community updates after Adepticon, like in a week or 2, I need to be ready to switch to whatever the hell GW throws at us. And I really liked it. Just fast moving, lots of bikes, lots of MSU stuff, a couple of melee components, and just lots of psychic power output. And it's my favorite way of playing Elder, and it's perfect.
Yeah, nice, mate. So what tech did you put in your list, or what do you have sort of up your sleeve to get you out of sticky situations, or not to play gotcha hammer on people, but what do you use to get you through those tough matchups? What's your fallback? So this is something we'll call this an Eric special, because Eric's definitely helped along in the last 10 years of my journey in terms of setting up, we'll call them like traps or like zones that look safe, but if you move models there, you can quickly move there and kind of like block line of sight and drill with mortal wounds. So you probably know what I'm talking about there, but I'll describe for anyone who hasn't experienced this wonderful experience. You can set up like zones where you're controlling this just by kind of like proxy, like you're nearby or slightly to the side, and there's an area there that looks safe. But if you move just a little bit too far ahead, or you start pressuring, the back line or whatever, you generally position your unit so that if whatever is your models, and so in my case, I've got 3 Farseers, I've got Shadow Seer, and lots of other type of shooting. It can jump over a wall or 2. It moves very fast, but it doesn't even have to move that fast, and just line itself up so it can't see anything else except for this one unit. It doesn't, regardless of what type of screening you do or whatever. And you can just drill that sucker with so many mortal wounds. That's one of my get out of jail free cards. It's just anyone who pushes just a little bit too much.
they're dead. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, okay. So
Um,
you're creating like a bit of a baited kill zone for people, and
yeah.
what if they don't take the bait? Then what's your backup?
Yeah. Well, this is the inherent speediness of my list. So, because I've got 13 Shroud Runners in this version of the list. I can dig you out, or I can chase you down. Let's put it that way, because of the pre-game move of 18, and then another 18. It doesn't really matter where you are. I'm gonna get you. And then there's the Shroud Runner strat, of course, of D3 mortal wounds and neg to your movement or charge, unless it's fly, and you can just set up things where just the 3-man Shroud Runners. I got 553, and it just you throw it up. It blocks movement, plus it slows units down either in the charge or movement phase, and it just says wait. Like whatever you're trying to do, you're not moving that far. And then if a unit actually does get closer to you, it's usually in a bad position, and it's going to get drilled by mortal wounds in essence.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, so that's the concept of the list, and it's fun as heck.
Love it. That's what we want to hear. We want to be performing or getting results out of our list, but we also want to be having a bit of fun. If you're grinding out games and you're grinding out wins, and it's hurting your back from moving hundreds of models, or it's hurting your brain from having to think for an hour before you do your GSC drop, it might not be sustainable for events. And it does impact some of the fun you do draw from events. So.
Yeah. I thought you were about to go, or it hurts your soul because you're playing Dark Angels.
Well, yeah, well, that's a whole other topic, and we might discuss that after Games Workshop drops their post-Adepticon amendments, and I'll jar up all the tears of the Dark Angel players that just bought or painted some Terminators.
I love it.
We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
Alrighty. So, how was your game? One of the games you said you wanted to spotlight.
Yeah, so part of the looking in the mirror title is we want to do a bit of a retrospective. We look at ourselves and our list and our results and what choices we made. And off that topic, I want to have just a quick chat about my first game. So to paint the scene for you, playing against Big Geordie from Normal Blokes, he's got his Blood Angels list. Your typical cut and dry Blood Angels list you'd expect, a couple of units Death Company, 3 units Sangard, either 1 or 2, depending on if you wanted to combat squad his vets. It's a full jump Marine army. It's got all your characters, it's got your Fist and your Dante, your Banner, your Apothecary, everything you would expect in a list if you see it's Blood Angels. We're playing on conversion, so 5 objectives, 1 in the dead center, and 1 sort of in the middle of each quarter thereafter, deploying 9 back from the center in like your box deployment. As you would expect, I've taken your typical Tau secondaries, so your aerospace relays, your decisive action, and because Jordan did bleed a bit of no prisoners, took no prisoners over assassinate, which gives Jordan a bit of an out and gives him a way he's going to play his game. Jordan, in response, took Relentless Assault, Oaths of Moment, and R&D, which we agreed R&D was a bad choice because he was never going to get to my side of the table, which I explained to him after he took it, and we explained at the end of the game that Banners probably would have been a better choice because I was never coming to his home objective because he just babysits it with Sangard, that Heroic 6. But looking back, retrospective of the game, I did sort of have it as about that 12 to 14 point win in my favour. But I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it's again, going back to this retrospective look, is when I was setting up to score my first 3 turns of Montcard decisive action, I was putting my units on the middle objective because it was where I sort of staged early on, which Geordie was pretty quick and pretty smart to pick up on, that he could double down his secondaries by moving over, sending out 1 unit, kills a 4 hounds or a couple of drones. So kills a nothing unit on the middle objective, but can go over and either score oaths for 3 for the turn, or potentially put a character over the top and go take a relentless. So he ended up scoring quite high on his relentless and his oaths, which could have actually been mitigated if I played the outside edge objectives and just not put anything in the middle. That was my fault for being out of practice against an army that plays oaths. We haven't seen it being taken as much recently since Codex Warfare had the glow up it got. So that was 100% my fault for not sort of picking up that he could do that and get those points. So big props to Jordan for finding that little loophole or that little thing that could keep him in the game. By the end of the game, he had very minimal left. He had I think up to 7-8 Sangard and a couple of Death Company. He had less than 15 Assault Marines and his Whirlwind. Don't really care about the Whirlwind. It does nothing to me. So he sustained a lot of casualties, but he scored while doing it, and that kept him pretty close in the round. Which we'll sort of get to a little bit later. So look, that was the experiences I sort of reflected myself and how I looked back on the game, and already sort of playing it out turn by turn in my head. I could have easily got to that 14-point mark by just not going in the middle whatsoever, so he doesn't get double value for killing something and being there.
Yep. No, and what you just said, and it's not like we've pre-planned exactly this conversation. That links very closely to one of my things that I learned. So I played Liam in the first round, and I thought I was favoured, and I made a few little mistakes leading into it, but more so than the mistakes, which we'll get to as another little topic in a second, it's the envisaging the game flow prior to us playing, and just kind of imagining it. I was reasonably confident in terms of how favoured I was or not. And so, what I put down as my predicted scores, I thought was actually reasonably accurate, and as it turned out, it would have been, had I not made mistakes or picked, say, a different secondary. But because I'm usually pretty good at this, and so I want to just go on for a little tangent here. I'm usually pretty good at taking a pause, thinking about how I think the game's going to go, even before deployment, but usually after we deploy, I can kind of map out in my head, how is this game going to go? But it's where you take it from, say, a normal player to a good player is to be able to do that. So you deploy, and you can then play out the rest of the game, in essence, in your head. The great players, and I occasionally aspire to be great in this case, is where you can do that game in your head before you pick secondaries. And you can then influence the game that you want to play by correct secondary selection. And in this case, I didn't. I goofed on the secondaries, and I only got 4 points on 2 secondaries all up. So I picked banners, and a mistake of mine cost me all but one of those banners. And I picked Warp Ritual instead of Psychic Interrogation, which meant exactly like you just said. You put something in the middle, and because Liam's playing a fast-ish moving custody army, gave him a charge target, which meant he got to the middle uncontested in essence. Whereas if I had nothing in the middle, he wouldn't be able to get there at all, because he's got +1 charge and his fancy charge. You get the idea. So very, very similar in terms of your list. If I had picked a different secondary, because I envisaged how he was going to be using his army, I could have, rather than losing 13-7, I would have won closer to the 11, 12, maybe even higher. But I estimated 11, a small win. It probably could have been a bigger win had I played much better and picked better secondaries. Anyway, I just want to kind of get across that concept that the more you play and the more better. The better you're getting as a player, you go from a ordinary player to a good player by exactly that. You can see what's going to be happening, and the more in the future you can see, the better player in essence you will become. I'll pause for a second so you can respond, but then I've got a specific little example I want to talk about.
Yeah. We'll dig a little bit deeper into your game versus Liam shortly, where I'll sort of you can go on another tangent and give us all the juicy goss. But yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think you need to be envisioning your first half of the game, so you need to be envisioning your turn sort of 1 to 3 before you pick secondaries, or use that to influence your secondary choice. But then afterwards, I think the route sort of diverges. You'll have it, if it is going the way you envisioned, you can keep that momentum going, and sort of flow out the rest of how you saw the game going. But you also need to be quite agile if something doesn't go your way. If you risk a bit of a 50-50, or you spike down, which can happen with playing a dice game. You do need to be agile to have a backup plan, and how you can change on the fly to either stay in the game, or especially in team events, if you have a captain come over and ask you to push for an extra 1 or 2 points, you do need to have that up your sleeve to be able to punch it into fifth gear and really get in and get those extra points.
Yep, absolutely. So one of my favorite stories I've said a couple of times to people was a young whippersnapper called Liam, the same very one. And I think it was about 6 years ago. He was at my house. He had just started playing with us. It was, he was top of the GW store at the Mount Cravat, and he was cracking heads over there. And then I think yourself or Eric went over there for one tournament, met him, smashed him, and then his eyes became open. Anyway, he came over for games at Eric's, and then eventually to my house. And he was playing Demons at the time, and it was and Liam, if you hear this, mate, I'm sure you can remember exactly the game that we're thinking about, which was we deploy our army with this was, what edition was this? I think this was 8th. It had to have been 8th, 7th, 8th, something like that. Anyway, he deploys his army, I deploy my army. And I'm going, yep, cool. So just take me through, because I was doing half training, half playing against him. Take me through kind of what you're thinking of what's going to happen. And he kind of says where he goes, and I go, yep, all right, cool. You do your first turn. He does his first turn. He drops all these blood letters and stuff, and because I reserved most of my army, he drops in, kills my backfield, kills everything, traps stuff in combat, and he's just very, chuffed with himself. And then we pause after his turn 1, and we go to my turn 1. I go, okay, cool. So as we did at the beginning of your turn, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do in my turn, and I've already won this game. And he looks at me like he does like the incredulous look. I just still remember. It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I just looked at him and it's like, yeah, no, I've won this game already. And he's just, I've just killed, like 25% of your army. I'm trapped in combat. What are you talking about? And it's like, well, this is what's going to happen. I take him through how I see the whole game going. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. We play 2 more turns and then we call it. And exactly how I said it. And almost to the point of what, how many points I was going to score as well. And then after the end of the game, he goes, teach me more. Like, it's just like, I need more of this. Like, how do you get to this point here? And I just love this again is the growth mindset. It's like you get someone, they can be a little bit cocky or not. It doesn't make a difference. But the point is, they grow. And like I'm personally, I know for my team at work or my kids or the players around me, all across Australia, I'm so proud for when I see players that I knew when they were, say, younger and full of piss and vinegar, so to speak. And they just grow into absolute beasts of players. And like I'm now just trying to catch up to them, so to speak, and just keeping them on their toes. I that story is going to stay with me. You know, I'll tell it to my grandchildren. Just like, there was this kid called Liam.
Gonna be like that Simpson meme where he's like, "All right, gather around, kids."
Exactly.
You telling under the tree. So he's basically finished his first turn, and you were like, "All right, call an ambulance, but not for me."
Pretty much. Yeah, and I'm sure, like, over the years, you've had instances of exactly that. I know, like, the person we both know that does this, in my opinion, the best in the world is Eric, where he can literally, before the game even starts, kind of map out how the work's going to go. But by turn 2, you know, and he knows you know, exactly how this game's going to go.
Yeah, and look, there's a huge difference to playing a game from turn 1 to turn 5 and then having a chat recapping your game afterwards and saying, you know, you could do this, this, and this better. But then I think taking it that step further is exactly how you explained it. You know, Simon, you're going first. Tell me what you're doing in this game. We're playing a practice game to help someone. I'm not trying to beat you. I'm trying to help you. It's tell me what you think and okay, cool. You finish your turn. Did you achieve it? Yeah, sort of. Okay, well, it's my turn. This is what I'm thinking and what it's going to do for your next turn. At the end, did you achieve it? Well, yes, I did. And I foresee this happening off the back of it. And it's giving them that insight before it happens.
Yep.
Because, you know, as much as we like to look back and, you know, reflect on what's happened, if you can sort of essentially tell someone not to do it before they do it, then that gives them a little bit more confidence of your ability that you're trying to help them, not trying to beat them.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and in some ways, like, and this is again in we'll say real life outside of 40k, there's almost like a personal accountability. If you say to the world or your opponent or whoever you're talking to what you're trying to achieve before you try and do it, so it doesn't give you the out to justify it after the fact, so to speak. It's like scientists, they're meant to write, say what their thesis is, what they're looking for when they do the experiment, not do experiments and then whatever results they get, they say, oh yeah, I was looking for that. And I do this in my personal life, but I also do it in 40k world, and in WTC world, like whenever we play like at reasonably high or competitive levels, you do it to almost a smaller extent anyway when you play by intent, because you generally say, I'm moving here because what I'm trying to do is do this, and then I'm going to trap that guy in combat. Are you happy that I can achieve that? And you work together with your opponent to achieve exactly that. By kind of stating it, up front, what you're trying to achieve, and working your way towards achieving that, they can then disagree at certain points, or you know what I mean? Like it kind of does that to a smaller extent by kind of playing by intent.
Yeah, for sure. And before we move on and chat a bit more about your game against Liam, because there's obviously some takeaways people can get from that. After this, what's your retrospective looking back at your list? What would you change?
So specifically about my list, the main thing I'm tweaking, like I've already made, you know me, I've already made a different version of the list.
I've made 3 actually.
And so one of the things that Liam, actually after our game, Liam suggested was try to get at least one more set of OBSEC within. Because my backfield objective, even though I've got a couple of elements of OBSEC, plus I've got Will of Assyrian to give me OBSEC, my backfield one that had my banner didn't have OBSEC, and he managed to sneak his way through because of the mistake I did with the thing that we're going to talk about in a second, and pulled out my banner. I never got that back, and had I had OBSEC, so I've just thrown in a 5-man, not Void Guard, but the Corsair guys, 50 points OBSEC. I've just thrown them in instead of the Void Guard, because I didn't really need the CP as much as I needed that OBSEC, and I just dropped a relic that didn't really do much in some of the games I've been practicing with, and so now I start with 3 CP, not 2. So that's what really the minor. That's the minor tweaks. What relic did you drop? What's it called? The thing on the Death Jester. It was Suit of Hidden Knives. It's like when you do, if you hit 3, you get 3 extra melee attacks, and if you hit with them, you do an immortal wound. I thought it might have a bit more play, and it's okay, but it didn't really come up at all. And yeah, I would rather the 1 extra CP because of actually both my games. Because I went second both games, and so when I Phantasm, I start with 0, which then turns into 1. Whereas like against the guard player round 2, if I have 3 CP, I Phantasm, I've got 1, then I go to 2. So now if they teleport anywhere near my bikes, I can intercept them. But I can't do that at 1 CP. Yeah. So anyway, that's the main tweak I've done. I'll be practicing this, but again, we're, all of us are just waiting to see what GW come up in the next couple of weeks before ATC.
Yeah, of course. And, even though some of these changes and some of these tweaks might be a little bit redundant in a week or so, because we might have a full meta change, it's good to get the reps in and doing it. And I think at a top level is when you can quickly change or quickly self-identify some of these issues, it makes you better on the fly. We had the massive change of going to Nephilim right before WTC, and I don't think we scrambled as much as some other teams or some other countries, because we were 8 pretty agile players, and we found our groove because we sort of do this in our local team events anyway.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? 10th Ed, I think they got like 3 weeks from when 10th Ed's dropping to when list submission is for WTC this year. That's pretty crazy.
That's pretty quick. But I'd like to think we'll have multiple support groups of not just the players and the coaches, but some of your veterans and some of your more renowned players. Everyone chipping in for, I guess, the greater good of Australia to get them back to get the gold again.
And everything they can. I think we got fluff players all around Australia, or people who fluff people. It's one of the two.
We don't have fluffers. We're not that kind of country.
All right, so I've alluded to it a couple of times, but the next minor topic, and it does stem to stuff that happened in my game against Liam, but it's not specifically against Liam, because I've noticed I do this in a couple of other games over maybe the last 6 to 12 months, and usually when I'm really, really focused, I don't not fall for it, or specifically I'm talking about where you kind of misremember or forget things that almost become, or do eventually become, game losing mistakes. And I don't know if it's particularly laziness, or if it's forgetfulness, or if it's because I'm now middle aged in terms of human development, and so is it old man style. But I wanted to kind of introduce this section as in essence, a plug to a great Goonhammer article by James Grover, and it's called Asking the Right Questions. And he introduced a particular phrase for stratagems, army-wide rules, things like that he called transformational rules. So it's where everyone knows what a Space Marine does, right? But depending on what faction you are, or sub-faction you are, or depending on what stratagem you are, or if you're using a special supplement or whatever, you transform, in essence, what a ordinary Space Marine does to something else. A good example happened at the teams event, the last teams event, which was Beast of Nurgle, right? Beasts of Nurgle are now different in that if you don't fully kill them, they fully heal. That's a pretty cool ability in general, and that's important to know. But then if you run them in the Disciples of Be'lakor, they start getting transformational rules in terms of they get army-wide -1 to hit, and then on top of that, if something runs away nearby for 1 CP, you can regain the guy. And now all of a sudden, like, this unit which you kind of say, okay, yeah, it moves this way. Oh, it's got 6-inch heroic. Oh, great. No, I didn't know that. So that kind of transforms what a hard to kill unit is to now it's a hard to kill unit, plus it can interrupt your abilities, oh, what's this? 6 is to hit, 2 mortal wounds. Oh my god, this has now gone from a annoying thing to a annoying thing that could interrupt your game plan to actually killing and wiping out half your army to possibly losing you the entire game, which literally happened almost in that game. Like these Beasts of Nurgle in Disciples of Bellicor went from a this is a hard to kill unit to I'm almost going to lose this game because of these stupid idiots.
And I think if you're when you're asking these transformational rule questions, it's what abilities or what things can you interject in the form of stratagems or data sheet abilities that I need to keep in mind for, especially in my turn. What can stop me coming in from reserve? What can shoot me when I come in from reserve? What heroics do you have? Do you have better interrupts? And a couple of those things are 100% worth asking before the game starts. Because if you ask before the game starts and you forget throughout the game, then that's on you. Everyone's human. We can forget stuff, and then it's not a gotcha. It feels bad when you ask someone, can you heroic, and you go, yeah, these guys can heroic. Then you get to the game, and they go, cool, it's actually heroic 6. You go, okay, you want to play like that.
Yeah. But for me, like I know when, because I play a lot of games, it's more, I forget or I misremember elements of that, and this is going to be my question to you: is like what tactics or things that you do to really remember these or improve this bit. But examples of is like Trajan, for example. So this is the big mistake I made because by forgetting that Trajan has an inherent 6-inch heroic, it gave Trajan in essence about 12-inch movement on a Viper that was on 4 wounds. It was about 5.5 inches away from Trajan, and I think at that time Liam didn't have any CP and so couldn't actually heroic with him, but he doesn't need CP to heroic, and his heroic is 6 inches, so he gets extra movement, kills the Viper, or piles around 3, kills the Viper, then piles another 3, and then he's in my back pile. So he started like 18 inches away from my all my casters, all my psychers, and everything, and he was never going to get to him, and they would kill Trajan next turn. To Trajan's killed them in my turn, and it's like in his very next turn. So that was a game losing mistake, and it was really like I knew that Trajan could heroic 6. I misremembered it, and I knew. I misremembered that he didn't need to spend CP for that though, and yeah, so you get the idea. So I made a big mistake. It turned out to be a game losing mistake, and it's because I misremembered certain things of it, and I didn't ask, so I was kind of in a sense lazy to do that. Now, what do you do to help you through that? Because I'm sure that happens to you sometimes. So what do you do to try and improve on that aspect?
Yeah. So to start, there's nothing worse than having Trajan 12 inches deeper in a place where you don't want him. That's that's all kinds of painful. Look, for me to stop it happening, it comes down to your pre-tournament reps, because no one cares if you make the mistake in a test game and you lose from it in a test game. No one cares. That's why we play. That's why we get reps for events. It's about making those mistakes in an environment where it's not critical. And if you can't get the reps, for example, if your personal life's a bit too busy, or you don't have anyone in your circle that plays a particular army, GSC was quite popular for that. You had people who the book's been out for 9 months, no one knew what they did because no one was playing them, and they're a bit of that funky sort of army. If you can't get the reps in them, then you need to get the mental reps in them by reading the book, understanding it, possibly watching a battle report of someone playing it, listen to a podcast of someone discussing it, and at least get the theory behind it down, so that when you do make the mistake, it sort of reinforces it. And, again, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but it's when you learn from them and grow from them and not let them happen again is where you'll see yourself grow as a player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I guess for you, what you're just making sure I've heard you properly. You're saying it's do the reps, just get the reps in. If the mistake happens, try to get that outside of tournaments. In
Yeah,
essence,
if you're going to make the mistake, if you're going to forget about something like Trajan, do it in a practice game. It doesn't matter, and you'll never forget it. I guarantee you're never going to let Trajan Heroic 6 into a Viper again, are you?
Look, I hope not, but I can't say never, but I really, really hope not.
Look, if you do, I'm just going to send you a link to this episode, and that's all I'm going to reply to you with. So,
it's going to be like a post. It's like, look, old man, I think it's time to hang up your boots. Awesome.
Yeah,
all right, mate. So mirror matches. Let's do a hard cut and straight to the whole thing this episode is meant to be about. It's like we've done enough fluffing. Do you actually think about this mirror match? Like when you build a list, do you have the mirror match in mind?
Yeah, look, I think you always need to be ready for a mirror. The great thing about a mirror is you're playing against your own codex, so you should know what it does. So before you even get to the table, you should know what the list is, what it does, where its synergy is, what its tech is, because you're playing that codex.
Yeah.
So that's the upside about a mirror, right? You have that fundamental knowledge going in, and you shouldn't get gotcha, or you shouldn't misremember stuff, like we were just talking about. When it comes to team events, I'd be more ready for the mirror in an 8-man than a 4-man teams. A 4-man teams, you probably wouldn't want to risk a mirror, and if they do swing, it's a bit more of a catastrophic result. If it swings the wrong way, it can unfortunately lose your rounds. So if you're playing a 4-man teams, maybe it's probably worth steering away from it, but still be ready for it, because you don't want your opposing captain to use that as leverage to influence your matchups.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're looking at it on the basis of an 8-man teams, you need to be ready for it, and you need to break it down. So the way I break it down is, first I look for similarities, but then I dig a bit deeper and emphasize on the actual differences, and what gives me an advantage or a disadvantage in that game. And then off the back of that, you plan your attack well before the game starts. So you plan how you're going to play the game, whether you want to play it quite passively and just go for a predicted 10-10 draw, because most of the time that's a pretty common entry for data for mirrors. You're probably just going to put it down as a draw, because you can always play pretty passive against each other and just call it a flat 10-10 draw. But when you're considering the mirror and you're breaking it down before the game starts, you still need to have something up your sleeve that can give you that little advantage. So a real life topic was on the weekend, we had the mirror of Tower vs Tower against the Drop Bear Gaming. So James, old Jimmy Webster from Gold Coast, absolute cracker dude. He was essentially playing my list from Uprising, so it had the Pathfinders in it. It was tweaked by about sort of 80 points, but for the most part, it was almost a copy and paste. Nothing against Jimmy about that. It's a great way to learn a new army. He's relatively new to Tau. The best way to do it is pick up someone who's got some reps and got some performance with it, and build your fundamentals from there. But going in, I knew exactly what the list does, because not only am I playing the book, I've played the actual army list, but with mine tweaked to have all those SMS, like we spoke about earlier in the episode. I was able to use it as a bit of a bully, or a bit of that little leverage, a bit of that knife in the matchup. So I was able to use all my indirect to pick up all of his hounds and all of his chaff screening, and keep all of his scoring elements, his fire warriors, his breaches. I was able to keep them all in the breaches, in the fishes, because as soon as they get out, they just get smart missiled. So that was a huge advantage in the mirror, more than I actually thought, because I didn't specifically put it in for the mirror. It was just a bit of a happy coincidence that it worked out to be the thing that
Because generally with the fishes, you want to jump out behind terrain so then you can move on if it's going to die. But you had that answer, whereas if you had just the burst cannons or drones, it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah, and I found a bit of a pinch in some scenarios where if they had the drones instead of smart missiles, you'd spend the CP strat to bail off your drones to go hold a nothing objective without giving up any resources. In that scenario, your fish is typically still sitting behind a wall, not being shot, and especially in the tower era, because they'll pick up a fish with 300 points of their army, and if they're sitting behind a wall, regardless of what weapons they have, why not take the guns that is still going to give me some sort of output? So on my first turn, I did get first. Prior to the game starting, I put both of my hammerheads in strat reserve. Which is a huge call against a tower player, because if you go second, you risk not having enough on the table and your opponent getting that early sort of leg up on the table and that bit of board dominance. Hopefully whatever they put out just gets picked up from the tower army, so I do get to buy myself one turn before my hammerheads come on. But thankfully I did get the first turn. My Recruit Hounds did their normal 7-inch pre-game move, which went straight forward. They then moved forward again, their full movement, and charged the hammerheads. Now, I charged from behind a wall so they couldn't overwatch me, and I tagged them in Data Scry, so I was able to wrap around one of them and sit and tag the back home objective, so Jimmy couldn't do first turn tertiary. Huge. Takes away up to 3 points just in the first turn from putting a nothing unit place where they're going to die anyway. But it then leaves him quite a difficult choice. He either falls back his hammerheads and foregoes the whole shooting, or they shoot in combat and he can declare his hammerhead rail gun out and just shoot the burst cannons in and kill the dogs, because 16 burst cannon shots is going to kill 4 dogs. That's no question. The hammerhead stays where it is, so what angles it can draw before they get their turn. You're not only taking away its shooting, but you're also taking away its movement. So if you have that opportunity, it's you're throwing away your hounds either way, and tower are going to go get them either way. They're just going to die, or they're going to sit in a place where they're just not going to do anything. You might as well get one turn of some value out of them. But yeah, in doing that, it pinned the hammerheads pretty much where they deployed, and it gave me a huge amount of breathing room to then bring my hammerheads on turn 2 from strat reserve and just get massive hammer and anvil sort of angles down the table. And I end up pinning a hammerhead and a riptide in behind a wall, where I either had to go right to the back of the table and essentially shoot nothing for a turn, or sit there, shoot, and get hammerheaded next turn when they came on.
So do you, just going back to my very first question though, so if you're in an 8-man, you think a bit more about the actual mirror, more so to say, than 4-man. What about in singles? Do you actually think about the mirror? Like, do you consider it as a thing before you say, do list changes and things like that?
I think you always need to have the mirror in your mind for singles, because it's a bit of a coin flip of whether you hit it or not. If you're playing a popular army, like if you're going to an event right now, if there was an event this weekend and you were taking Dark Angels, you would be stupid to not be thinking about the mirror, because it's so heavily represented.
Yeah, because you play, like, generally you play Tau, which is, it wanes and, like, it's feast and famine in terms of how popular it is. You do play Space Marines on the occasion, which means you probably hit the mirror a bit more than the average bear, and then eventually Guard. I don't know. The last time I seriously considered mirrors, like in general, I don't go into thinking about the mirror. until I think exactly like you said. Until I'm thinking about, we'll say teams or 8-man teams specifically. I again not pre-prepared, but I am in 100% agreement with that. I play the Eldars and the Tyranids, GSE and Tyranids. So GSE now more so, you actually have to think about the mirror because there's a number of players who play GSE. But
yep.
Tyranids, I think I played 2 mirrors in like 6+ months and 100 and something games.
Which is strange because Leviathan was pretty popular in that little section, so I would have expected you to play more mirrors.
Yeah, I guess. I'm going to link our last episode and this episode, and this will probably happen over the next 6+ months. But if you remember, like who I play against, I try to play against what I'll consider the top players or the better players within Australia, right? Because unless I'm purposely training up someone new, I need reps, and you get reps into good players, and that way you stay sharp. The main people I play against, because we're always focused on teams, are not usually playing the same faction as or I've self-selected out of factions that other people are playing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, like, Eric, I play reasonably often, and he's almost never playing the same thing as me, unless we're purposely doing it, The other players around me that I play against often, I might play him once, maybe twice, if I wanted to train the mirror. But in general, we're all playing different stuff because we kind of all naturally fall into unique factions for that kind of next season, in essence. And I think the last time I seriously had to think about the mirror was actually Dark Elder. Remember, like, early 9th ed?
Oh, yeah. The liquefy boat spam and muscle.
Yeah.
Week, whatever they called it. Yeah.
I played 2 mirrors in a row. This is when Soli came up to that event. So I played Soli, and then I played Luke. And I was running Dark Elder myself. So, like, I really had to think about the mirror in that case. And then Uprising was that same, like, the next year, like the couple of months later. And
within the same meta.
Yeah, and I played Chris, right, who was playing Dark Elder, and then I played Soli again, who was playing Dark Elder. So, like, Dark Elder was when I was actually really thinking about the mirror, and, like, some of this, like, thinking about how do I tech for the mirror actually came into it. Because in general, over my, we'll call it 40k career, I was always playing the minor races. I don't play Space Marines, don't play any of the Imperium or anything like that. So, very rarely was I playing the popular stuff. It might have been strong, but it was never that popular.
Look, I know you're a snowflake. You don't have to convince me, mate.
Yeah, exactly. So the point being is, I think the last time I seriously considered the mirror was Dark Elder World. Every man and their dog was playing it. And then I was playing, lead up to WC Tyranids. And while it was reasonably popular in the world, in the people who I played against specifically, not that often. And it wasn't unless I was playing reps to practice against the mirror for WCC where, say, Eric would run into me, with it.
Yeah, look, if you're consistently getting reps in for a mirror, you're probably the most sadistic person I've ever met, to be honest, because I can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah. But saying that, so one of the things that you mentioned, there are kind of little, almost like happy accidents, or there are certain tech pieces you can pick into. So because I play occasionally against Michael Edwards, okay, the guy, his name dropped twice already this list, so you're getting
look,
awesome.
He might as well start paying us royalties soon. Jesus.
But I was doing some prep for Uprising and playing the Hawks into the mirror.
Yes.
I did actually play one of those, and the fast moving Shroud Runners actually pick up the Hawks reasonably easily. You have to really be careful if you go second. That's where it gave me the idea that if I pivoted to a fast moving Elder, which I took Sam home, but then eventually now with the heavy bike, fast moving Elder, it actually smashes the mirror for anything other than like a literal identical list. So if someone's playing any type of Swift Strike, Hail of Doom, or any other type of stuff, if I go first in that mirror, my army generally does really, really well against that, as I've found out. So I have it's like one of those happy accidents where you start, it happens, and then you start taking into that just so you can just say, yeah, I'm going to get those guys.
Yeah, well, as the happy accident, as you called it, like when I was playing against Rory with his guard, I had mortars just, peppering my crude hounds, which are quite a valuable asset in a couple of matchups, and it was just so annoying that I had I was influenced by these mortars that I couldn't reach, that weren't amazing at killing the hounds when they sit in bit of cover to get +2 and then the indirect bonus. So they're back onto a 3-up save.
Mm-hmm.
But it's annoying that I have 9 little idiots with the boom chamber just influencing the more important parts of my list.
Yep.
So having the inverse of that, where my smarts are essentially acting as those mortars, but possibly a little bit better because they're ignoring the light cover. Having that just happen, it was exactly as you said, a bit of a happy accident that ended up giving quite a huge advantage in the mirror.
And one of the things I know that I experimented with it a little bit, but then Eric took it when he was testing out the new NIDs, because once something gets nerfed, Eric has to play that and pretend he's the ultimate snowflake in the Snowflake Olympics. And in the mirror for Tyranids, there is like a relic, for example, that you can take that absolutely smashes, which is it's the relic that turns off Obsec if you get a hit. And like he ran it on his Turbogon, or you can run it on your parasites and things like that. So you can run double parasite plus that relic. You fly over something, turn off Obsec, and then you hit hit something else. And so if you play that mirror where they're relying on smashing on primary because everything's Obsec, and then all of a sudden everything gets off of everything, all Obsec is being turned off. It's like, oh, okay, I'm actually screwed in this game.
Yeah, for sure. For people that say it doesn't snow in Queensland, we have the biggest snowflake in Acacia Ridge.
Yep. It's great. Awesome. We did make a promise, and I did remember it about halfway through. I did forget to give a shout out to one of our other Ethos members. He put himself on a Facebook sabbatical, and so he wasn't in when I took a screenshot of who was in our members, I forgot about him. But Paul Gurney, he is a proud and true Ethos member. He is a very valued member of the team, and a fantastic, I call him Cave Golem. Yeah, no, that's fair. No.
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, probably the most travelled member of Team Ethos, to be honest.
That's right.
He's probably got some. He's probably get some good air miles. Old Paulie.
Yeah. So yes, he is down in the Goblin world, in the mines, and so he doesn't necessarily. He tries to travel a lot and play at what's it called, at events, and we play generally once every 2 weeks, maybe once a week occasionally, when he's not working in the mines, on TTS. And yeah, really cool guy. And this is your 2 minutes of fame, Paulie. As I said, I apologize for missing you when we were doing the introductions.
Big avid Iron Hands player. Loves his Iron Hands. Doesn't take much notice of advice people give him about Iron Hands, but he loves playing his Iron Hands.
That's right. And he thinks AdMech is a very simple army to play, and all the pre-game stuff. Nah, it's not. It's a piece of piss. Yeah.
Super easy. So
yeah.
Shout out to Paulie, very valued member of Team Ethos, and I believe the post for Paul's already been put up on the page.
It has been.
So jump over and check that out and familiarise yourself with Paul's face, because you probably see him around the tournament scene and you might not even realise who he is. So if you see him, look up, say hi, introduce yourself. He's a nice approachable bloke to have a chat to.
That's right.
He'll tell you all about our Lord and Saviour, Iron Hands Feros.
That's right. And he is a pretending, as when we were down in Adelaide, he's a fantastic wine sommelier. Like the person who knows everything about wine. He's the one that can bullshit at the peak.
In his defence about Admech though, we did have a friendly little wager that if he took Admech to his first event and he went at least 2-1, I got to buy him a bottle of wine. If he went 3-0, I got to buy him a bottle of wine that was like $40 or more. But if he went 1 or 2 and worse, he's got to buy me a bottle of wine.
Yeah, what happened?
Drawing the skin of his teeth, he got a 2-1. So we're gonna share a nice bottle of wine together at the next event we're at.
Very nice, very nice. Alrighty, look, I think that's enough for episode, man. Thank you all for listening. Hopefully this was interesting to you guys. Again, throw us some comments if you want us to cover anything in particular, or if you want us to explain something a little bit more, or I don't know, whatever you want to tell us. The next event, at least for myself and I believe for you, is ATC. But there is a big event that a bunch of the Ethos guys are going down to, and in fact Ben, that you heard from last episode, I believe he's the TO for down in Newcastle, which is coming up this next weekend. So we might get one of those guys in for next week's episode, so they can do a wrap-up covering of that.
Yeah, those guys always put on a good show, and the venue down there they run those out of is really nice. They have their token cocktail, the Storm Surge, which everyone was pretty rowdy on at Masters, so it became a staple drink on the menu that even sells to non-40k players that apparently love it. I think all their tickets are sold out, so if you're planning to, if this was the last little bit of convincing you needed to go, you've probably well and truly missed the train, because I think they've sold out their tickets quite a while ago. But big shout out to the Down Under 40k guys. Keep an eye on their page for their events coming up, because they do put on a cracker show.